Tonight, let me tell you a story that unfolds like a gentle dream, where love blooms slowly and sweetly, like flowers opening to the morning sun. This is a tale meant to carry you softly into sleep, where every word is chosen to calm your mind and ease your heart into peaceful rest. It's the story of Jack and Rose, two souls who found each other in the most extraordinary of circumstances aboard the grandest ship the world had ever seen. Before you settle in completely, take a moment to find your most comfortable position. Pull your blankets close and let your breathing slow to match the rhythm of this gentle tale. Tonight, we're embarking on a journey back to 1912, to a time when the world moved at a different pace, when letters took weeks to cross the ocean, and when the grandest adventure meant stepping aboard a magnificent vessel bound for distant shores. This story isn't about drama or heartbreak. Instead, it's about the quiet moments that matter most, the stolen glances across crowded rooms, the conversations that stretch long into peaceful evenings, the way two people can find something extraordinary in the most ordinary of moments. And as I tell you this tale, let each scene wash over you like gentle waves, carrying away the worries of your day. The year was 1912, and Southampton's harbor bustled with an energy that seemed to hum through the very air. Steam rose from countless chimneys, and the sound of workers calling to one another echoed off the water. But above all this commotion towered something magnificent. The RMS Titanic sat majestically at the dock, her four enormous funnels reaching toward the spring sky like the spires of some great cathedral. Rose DeWitt Bukater stepped from her family's elegant carriage, her soft blue traveling dress rustling gently in the harbor breeze. She was 17, with kind eyes that held a quiet intelligence and a smile that came easily when she forgot to be proper. Her hair was arranged in the fashion of the day, but little wisps escaped to frame her face in the most charming way. She carried herself with the grace expected of a young lady of her station. Yet there was something wonderfully genuine about her that set her apart from the other passengers boarding that morning. Her mother, Ruth, fussed over the arrangements with their steward, ensuring their trunks were properly loaded and their first-class accommodations were exactly as ordered. Rose watched the organized chaos around them with wide, curious eyes. She had traveled before, of course, but never on anything quite like this floating palace. The ship seemed to stretch endlessly in both directions, its white hull gleaming in the morning sunlight. Meanwhile, across the harbor in the bustling third-class boarding area, a young man named Jack Dawson waited in line with a very different sort of excitement. At 20, Jack possessed an artist's soul and a wanderer's heart. His clothes were simple but clean, his hair tousled by the sea breeze, and his eyes sparkled with the kind of enthusiasm that comes from seeing every day as a new adventure. He carried nothing more than a worn leather portfolio filled with his sketches and the few belongings that mattered to him. Jack had won his passage aboard the Titanic in a card game just 2 nights before. Not through gambling or trickery, but through an honest game of poker with a stroke of luck that seemed almost too good to be true. As he looked up at the massive ship before him, he couldn't help but grin. Here he was, about to sail to America aboard the most luxurious vessel ever built, and all because he'd happened to draw exactly the right cards at exactly the right moment. The boarding process moved like a carefully orchestrated dance. First-class passengers were escorted up the grand gangway with ceremony and courtesy, while stewards in crisp uniforms attended to their every need. Rose found herself swept along with the other privileged passengers, her mother chatting excitedly with acquaintances they encountered along the way. But Rose's attention kept drifting to the ship itself, the gleaming brass fixtures, the polished wood railings, the intricate details carved into every surface. As she stepped onto the promenade deck for the first time, Rose felt her breath catch. The space was enormous, with tall windows that let in streams of golden sunlight. Elegant passengers strolled leisurely, their voices creating a gentle murmur that mixed with the sound of the ship's preparations. It was like stepping into a grand hotel that happened to float on water. Jack's experience was quite different, but no less wonderful in its own way. The third-class accommodations were simple but clean, with cheerful families and hopeful immigrants creating a warm, communal atmosphere. Children played games while their parents organized their belongings, and the air buzzed with conversations in a dozen different languages. Everyone seemed to share the same sense of anticipation, the same excitement about the journey ahead and the new life waiting for them in America. After settling into his modest cabin, Jack made his way to the third-class deck. The view was different from here, but no less spectacular. The ocean stretched out endlessly in every direction, and the fresh sea air filled his lungs with a cleanness he'd never experienced in the crowded cities, where he'd spent most of his life. He pulled out his sketchbook and began to draw, capturing the faces of his fellow passengers, the details of the ship's rigging, the way the light played across the water. That first evening aboard the Titanic passed peacefully for both Jack and Rose, though in very different settings. Rose dined in the grand first-class dining room, where crystal chandeliers cast soft light over tables dressed in the finest linens. The conversation flowed as smoothly as the wine, touching on art, literature, and the latest fashions from Paris. Yet, despite the luxury surrounding her, Rose found her mind wandering. She gazed out the tall windows at the darkening ocean and wondered about the other passengers aboard this floating city, about their stories and their dreams. Jack, meanwhile, enjoyed a hearty meal in the third-class dining hall, where the atmosphere was livelier and more relaxed. Families shared stories, musicians played cheerful songs, and children laughed as they chased each other between the tables. After dinner, many passengers gathered on the third-class deck to enjoy the mild evening air. Someone produced a fiddle, another passenger had a small accordion, and soon there was dancing under the stars. Jack found himself sketching the scene, trying to capture the joy and hope he saw in every face around him. As the ship settled into its rhythm for the first night at sea, both Jack and Rose stood at their respective railings, looking out at the same star-filled sky. Neither knew of the other's existence yet, but both felt the same sense of possibility that comes with setting out on a great journey. The gentle rocking of the ship and the soft sound of water moving past the hull created the perfect lullaby for their first night aboard the Titanic. Rose retired to her elegant stateroom, where her maid had already laid out her nightgown and turned down the fine linens on her bed. As she brushed her hair by the light of the electric lamp, she thought about the days ahead. The crossing would take nearly a week, and she found herself curious about what adventures might unfold during that time. She had brought several books to read, and she planned to spend time walking the decks and perhaps writing in her journal. Jack settled into his narrow but comfortable bunk, listening to the quiet breathing of his cabin mates and the gentle creaking of the ship as it moved through the calm seas. He thought about the sketches he would make during the voyage, the faces he would draw, the moments he would try to capture on paper. As an artist, he was always looking for beauty in unexpected places, and he had a feeling this journey would provide him with more inspiration than he could possibly use. The ship moved steadily through the peaceful night, carrying its passengers toward their dreams. In the elegant first-class suites, in the cozy third-class cabins, people settled into sleep with the same sense of anticipation. Tomorrow would bring new conversations, new discoveries, and perhaps new friendships. The Titanic was more than just a means of transportation. It was a floating world where people from different backgrounds and different circumstances shared the same sky, the same ocean, and the same hopeful journey toward whatever awaited them across the Atlantic. As the night deepened and the stars grew brighter, the great ship continued its steady progress through waters so calm they seemed like glass. The gentle rhythm of the engines provided a soothing heartbeat that lulled passengers into peaceful dreams, while the soft whisper of water against the hull sang them a lullaby that would carry them safely through the night and into tomorrow's possibilities. The second day aboard the Titanic dawned with the softest golden light filtering through the porthole windows. Rose woke to the gentle movement of the ship, a rhythmic swaying that felt almost like being rocked in a giant cradle. She dressed in a simple white blouse and navy skirt, choosing comfort over formality for this day of exploration. Her mother had planned a busy schedule of social calls, informal teas, but Rose found herself longing for something different, something that would let her truly experience this magnificent vessel. After a light breakfast of fresh fruit and warm pastries, Rose excused herself from her mother's social obligations and decided to explore the ship on her own. She wandered through the grand corridors, admiring the intricate woodwork and the beautiful stained glass windows that cast rainbow patterns on the polished floors. The ship was like a floating palace, with libraries filled with leather-bound books, music rooms where passengers gathered around gleaming pianos, and observation lounges where people sat quietly, watching the endless expanse of ocean roll by. Jack had risen early, eager to capture the morning light in his sketches. He found a quiet spot on the third-class deck where he could draw without disturbing the families who were beginning to emerge for their morning routines. The ocean stretched out like a blue mirror, broken only by the gentle wake of the ship as it cut through the calm waters. He sketched the horizon, trying to capture that magical line where the sea met the sky, where everything seemed possible and dreams felt close enough to touch. As the morning progressed, Jack noticed children playing simple games on the deck while their parents chatted in small groups. The atmosphere was warm and friendly, with people sharing stories of their hopes for America, their plans for new lives in a new land. An elderly man played a harmonica softly, creating a gentle melody that mixed with the sound of the wind and the distant call of seabirds that still followed the ship from shore. Rose found herself drawn to the ship's grand staircase, where passengers moved up and down like actors on a magnificent stage. The carved angels that adorned the staircase seemed to watch over everyone with benevolent smiles, and the dome of glass above let in streams of natural light that made everything glow. She settled into a comfortable chair in a quiet alcove nearby, pulling out a book of poetry she had brought from home. But instead of reading, she found herself watching the gentle parade of passengers and wondering about their stories. A family with 3 young children walked by, the parents holding hands, while the children skipped ahead, their laughter echoing in the vast space. An elderly couple moved slowly together, the gentleman's hand resting protectively on his wife's arm as they admired the elegant surroundings. Two young women, perhaps sisters, chatted excitedly as they planned their activities for the day. Each person seemed to carry their own little world of hopes and dreams, and Rose felt honored to witness these quiet moments of happiness. Jack spent the afternoon in the ship's third-class library, a smaller but no less welcoming space, filled with books donated by passengers and well-wishers. He found a volume of American poetry and settled into a worn but comfortable chair by the window. The words on the page seemed to dance with the rhythm of the ship, and he found himself inspired to sketch the margins with small drawings that captured the essence of what he was reading. A poem about wide open spaces made him draw rolling hills, while verses about city life inspired tiny sketches of bustling streets and tall buildings. As the day wore on, both Jack and Rose found themselves drawn to the ship's railings. Though on different decks, the afternoon sun was warm and gentle, creating perfect conditions for quiet contemplation. Rose stood at the first-class promenade, watching the water flow past in mesmerizing patterns. She had removed her gloves and let the sea breeze play through her fingers, enjoying the simple pleasure of fresh air and freedom from the formal constraints of her usual routine. Jack leaned against the third-class railing, his sketchbook balanced on the painted metal as he drew the endless expanse of water. Dolphins had appeared alongside the ship, their graceful forms leaping and diving in what looked like pure joy. He tried to capture their movement, the way they seemed to dance with the waves, celebrating life in its simplest and most beautiful form. Other passengers gathered around to watch the dolphins, and Jack found himself sharing his sketches with children who pointed excitedly at his drawings and asked him to draw their favorite sea creatures. The ship's daily routine was beginning to establish itself, creating a comfortable rhythm that made everyone feel at home on the water. Meals were served at regular times, with the dining rooms filling with the pleasant sounds of conversation and clinking silverware. Between meals, passengers found their own ways to pass the time. Some read in the libraries, others played cards in the smoking rooms, and many simply walked the decks, enjoying the fresh air and the spectacular views. Rose discovered the ship's gymnasium, where passengers could exercise on rowing machines and stationary bicycles while looking out at the ocean through large windows. The instructor, a cheerful man with a thick mustache, demonstrated the equipment with great enthusiasm, explaining how each machine could help passengers stay fit during the voyage. Rose tried the rowing machine and found herself laughing at the novelty of it, imagining she was rowing a small boat across a peaceful lake rather than exercising aboard a massive steamship. In the evening, both first and third-class passengers gathered in their respective social areas for entertainment. The first-class lounge featured a string quartet playing gentle classical pieces, while passengers sat in comfortable chairs, sipping tea and engaging in quiet conversation. The music was soothing and elegant, creating an atmosphere of refined relaxation that perfectly matched the luxurious surroundings. The third-class common area buzzed with more energetic entertainment. Someone had brought out a concertina, and passengers took turns sharing songs from their homelands. Children clapped along, while adults tapped their feet, and the air filled with melodies that spoke of distant places and cherished memories. Jack found himself swept up in the music, sketching the animated faces around him and trying to capture the pure joy he saw in every expression. As the second night settled over the ship, passengers began to retire to their cabins with the same sense of contentment they had felt the night before. The Titanic continued its steady progress through waters that remained remarkably calm, as if the ocean itself wanted to ensure a peaceful journey for everyone aboard. The ship's lights twinkled like stars against the dark water, creating a warm glow that made the vessel feel like a floating sanctuary of comfort and safety. Rose brushed her hair by the window of her stateroom, looking out at the star-filled sky that seemed to stretch forever in every direction. She had enjoyed her day of exploration and felt a growing appreciation for this remarkable ship and the diverse community of people it carried. Tomorrow would bring new discoveries, new conversations, and perhaps new friendships that would make the journey even more memorable. Jack settled into his bunk with his sketchbook beside him, filled with the day's drawings. He had captured dolphins and children, musicians and families, all the beautiful moments that made life aboard the ship feel like an adventure worth treasuring. As he drifted toward sleep, he listened to the gentle sounds of the ship moving through the night, carrying its precious cargo of dreams and hopes toward the distant shore of America. The great ship sailed on through the peaceful darkness, its passengers safe and warm in their beds, dreaming of tomorrow's possibilities, while the ocean whispered its ancient lullabies around them. The third day aboard the Titanic brought with it a morning mist that clung to the ocean like a soft, gray blanket. Rose woke to the sound of gentle rain pattering against her porthole window, creating tiny rivers that traced delicate patterns down the glass. The weather had turned cooler during the night, and she could feel the ship moving through slightly choppier waters, though still nothing more than a pleasant rocking motion that made her feel as though she were sleeping in a treehouse, swaying gently in the wind. She chose a warm lavender dress for the day and wrapped a soft shawl around her shoulders before making her way to breakfast. The dining room felt especially cozy, with the rain creating a peaceful backdrop outside the tall windows. Other passengers seemed to share her appreciation for the quieter atmosphere, speaking in softer tones and moving with the unhurried grace of people who had nowhere urgent to be. Jack had spent the early morning hours in the third-class common area, where several passengers had gathered to escape the dampness on deck. Someone had found a chess set, and a friendly tournament was underway, with spectators offering gentle advice and encouragement to the players. Jack sketched the concentration on the players' faces, the way their brows furrowed as they considered their next moves, the satisfied smiles when they made particularly clever plays. The rain continued through the morning, creating the perfect excuse for indoor exploration. Rose discovered the ship's beautiful reading room, where passengers could choose from hundreds of books and magazines while settling into plush armchairs arranged around small tables. The room had the warm, welcoming feeling of a beloved library, with soft lighting and the quiet rustle of turning pages, creating an atmosphere of peaceful concentration. She selected a collection of short stories and found a corner seat where she could watch the rain streaming down the windows while losing herself in tales of distant places and gentle adventures. Other passengers came and went quietly, some reading newspapers, others writing letters to loved ones they would see again soon in America. The room filled with the comfortable silence of people enjoying their own quiet pursuits while sharing the same cozy space. Jack found his way to the ship's workshop area, where passengers could try their hand at various crafts during the voyage. A kind instructor was teaching interested passengers how to carve small wooden figures, and Jack discovered he had a natural talent for the work. His artistic eye helped him see the shapes hidden within the wood. And soon he was creating tiny dolphins and seabirds that seemed to capture the spirit of the ocean journey. The workshop was filled with passengers of all ages, from elderly gentlemen who whittled with the patience of long practice to young children who giggled as they made simple shapes under careful supervision. The atmosphere was warm and communal, with people sharing tools, offering suggestions, and admiring each other's creations. Jack found himself helping a young boy create his first wooden boat, guiding the child's small hands as they shaped the hull and carved tiny details into the wood. As the afternoon approached, the rain began to lighten, creating a soft drizzle that made everything shimmer with moisture. Rose decided to venture onto the covered portion of the promenade deck, where she could enjoy the fresh sea air without getting completely soaked. The ship moved through waters that had turned a deeper shade of blue-gray, and the horizon was softened by mist that made the boundary between sea and sky almost invisible. She wasn't alone in her desire for fresh air. Other passengers had gathered under the covered areas, some playing quiet card games, others simply enjoying conversation while watching the rain dance across the ocean surface. The sound of water against water created a gentle symphony that seemed to calm everyone's spirits and encourage peaceful reflection. Jack emerged onto the third-class deck area, where families had gathered under whatever shelter they could find. Children pressed their faces against the windows, drawing pictures in the condensation and laughing at the shapes they created. Their parents watched with fond smiles, occasionally wiping the windows clean so the children could start again. The scene reminded Jack of his own childhood, when simple pleasures like drawing in steamed windows could provide hours of entertainment. He began sketching the children at play, capturing their innocent joy and the way their parents watched them with such gentle love. An elderly woman noticed his drawings and invited him to sit with her family, sharing stories of the grandchildren she was traveling to see in America. Her eyes sparkled as she described their letters, full of excitement about her upcoming visit, and Jack found himself drawing her expressions of anticipation and love. The ship's dining rooms took on an extra warmth during the rainy afternoon. Hot soup was served in the third-class dining hall, filling the space with delicious aromas of vegetables and herbs. Passengers lingered over their meals, enjoying the comfort of warm food and friendly conversation, while the rain continued its gentle percussion on the windows above. Jack shared a table with a family from Ireland, listening to their musical accents as they told stories of their homeland and their hopes for their new life across the ocean. In the first-class dining room, Rose enjoyed a leisurely lunch of fresh bread and creamy soup, accompanied by the soft conversation of fellow passengers who seemed equally content to take their time. The formal atmosphere was softened by the weather, creating a more intimate feeling as people shared quiet observations about the journey and their fellow travelers. As evening approached, the rain finally stopped, leaving the air fresh and clean with that particular scent that comes after a gentle storm at sea. The ocean had calmed again, returning to its mirror-like state that reflected the soft colors of the setting sun. Passengers began to emerge from the indoor spaces, eager to enjoy the renewed beauty of the evening. Rose walked slowly along the promenade deck, breathing in the clean air and marveling at how the rain had washed everything bright and new. The ship's brass fittings gleamed like gold in the evening light, and the wooden decks had been polished by the rain until they shone. Other passengers strolled peacefully, many commenting on how beautiful everything looked after the storm. Jack found a spot on the third-class deck where he could watch the sunset, paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. The clouds that had brought the rain were breaking apart now, creating dramatic patterns that shifted and changed as the light faded. He sketched quickly, trying to capture the ever-changing beauty of the sky and the way it reflected in the calm water below. Families began to gather on the decks for their evening routines. Children who had been cooped up inside all day ran happily in the fresh air, their laughter mixing with the gentle sounds of the ship and the ocean. Parents watched them play while enjoying quiet conversations with other passengers, and the sense of community that had been building over the past few days seemed to grow even stronger. The evening entertainment took on a special quality after the day of rain. In the first-class lounge, passengers gathered around the piano while someone played gentle melodies that seemed to capture the peaceful mood of the evening. People hummed along softly, and the music blended beautifully with the sound of the ocean moving past the ship. The third-class common area buzzed with renewed energy as passengers who had been indoors all day came together to share stories and songs. Someone had brought out a fiddle, and the music was lively and joyful, encouraging people to dance and clap along. Jack found himself swept up in the celebration, sketching the animated faces around him and feeling grateful to be part of such a warm and welcoming community. As the third night settled over the ship, passengers retired to their cabins with a special appreciation for the comfort and safety of their floating home. The rain had reminded everyone of how protected they were aboard this magnificent vessel, how skillfully it had carried them through the weather while keeping everyone warm and dry. Rose prepared for sleep while listening to the gentle sounds of the ship moving through the now calm waters. The rain had washed the air so clean that she could smell the ocean through her slightly open porthole, a fresh, salt-tinged scent that seemed to promise peaceful dreams. She thought about the day's quiet pleasures, the cozy hours spent reading, the beauty of the rain-washed evening, and the growing sense of belonging she felt aboard this remarkable ship. Jack settled into his bunk with his sketchbook full of the day's drawings. He had captured children at play, families sharing meals, the beauty of the rain, and the sunset that followed. Each sketch told a story of simple contentments and shared experiences, reminders of how even a rainy day could become something special when spent among kind people in a safe and comfortable place. The Titanic sailed on through the peaceful night, its lights twinkling like stars against the dark water. The storm had passed, leaving behind air so clear and stars so bright that the night sky seemed close enough to touch. Passengers slept soundly in their warm beds, dreaming of tomorrow's adventures, while the great ship carried them safely through the darkness toward their destination and their dreams. The fourth morning aboard the Titanic arrived with the most glorious sunrise anyone could imagine. Rose woke to streams of golden light pouring through her porthole, painting her cabin in warm honey hues that made everything feel touched by magic. The storm had passed completely, leaving behind waters so still and clear they looked like polished glass stretching endlessly toward the horizon. She could hear other passengers stirring in nearby cabins, their voices carrying notes of excitement and wonder at the beautiful day that awaited them. She chose a dress of pale yellow that seemed to capture the morning sunshine, and as she prepared for the day, she found herself humming a gentle melody that had been playing in the first-class lounge the evening before. There was something about this particular morning that felt special, though she couldn't quite name what it was. Perhaps it was simply the way the light danced on the water, or how the ship seemed to glide even more smoothly than usual. But Rose felt a sense of anticipation that made her heart flutter like butterfly wings. Jack had risen early to watch the sunrise from the third-class deck, and what he witnessed took his breath away completely. The sky had transformed into a masterpiece of colors, with streaks of coral pink, soft lavender, and burnished gold stretching across the heavens like brushstrokes on an enormous canvas. He sketched furiously, trying to capture the ever-changing beauty, but soon gave up and simply stood in awe, letting the magnificent sight fill his artist's soul with inspiration. Other early risers had gathered on the deck to witness the spectacular dawn, and a comfortable silence settled over the group as everyone appreciated nature's daily miracle. Children pointed excitedly at the colors in the sky, while their parents wrapped them in warm blankets, creating cozy family moments that Jack couldn't help but capture in quick, tender sketches. An elderly couple stood hand in hand, watching their first sunrise at sea together, their faces glowing with the same wonder Jack felt in his own heart. After breakfast, Rose decided to explore a part of the ship she hadn't yet visited, the conservatory, where passengers could enjoy beautiful plants and flowers even while traveling across the vast ocean. The space was like stepping into a secret garden, with carefully tended flowers blooming in large pots and climbing vines, creating natural alcoves where people could sit quietly among the greenery. The morning light filtered through the glass ceiling, creating dappled shadows that danced across the floor as the ship gently swayed. She found a bench near a collection of white roses that filled the air with their delicate fragrance, and settled there with her journal, finally ready to write about her experiences aboard this remarkable vessel. As she wrote, other passengers wandered through the conservatory, some reading books among the flowers, others simply sitting quietly and enjoying the peaceful atmosphere. The space felt like a little piece of heaven floating on the ocean, a reminder that beauty could flourish anywhere with enough care and attention. Jack spent the morning exploring the ship's lower decks, where he discovered workshops and storage areas that most passengers never saw. The crew members he encountered were friendly and proud of their work, happy to show him how the great ship operated. In the engine rooms, massive machines worked with rhythmic precision, their steady heartbeat powering the vessel through the water. The workers moved with practiced efficiency, their faces showing the satisfaction of people who took pride in their important work. A kind stoker named Murphy invited Jack to see how coal was fed into the enormous furnaces that kept the engines running. The work was hot and demanding, but Murphy and his colleagues approached it with good humor and teamwork that impressed Jack deeply. He sketched their strong hands and determined faces, trying to capture the dignity and skill of people whose labor made the entire journey possible. As the day progressed, Jack found himself drawn to a part of the ship where third-class passengers often gathered for informal music sessions. A group of Irish families had brought traditional instruments, and their music filled the air with melodies that spoke of green hills and ancient stories passed down through generations. Children danced in circles, while their grandparents clapped along, their faces bright with joy and cultural pride. Jack pulled out his sketchbook and began drawing the scene, but soon found himself invited to join the circle. Though he couldn't play any instruments, his enthusiasm was welcomed warmly, and he clapped along with the rhythm while sketching between songs. The music seemed to connect everyone present, creating bonds that transcended language barriers and cultural differences. Meanwhile, Rose had discovered the ship's writing room, where passengers could compose letters and postcards to send from the next port. The room was elegantly appointed with fine writing paper and comfortable chairs, arranged near tall windows that provided perfect natural light. She began writing a letter to a dear friend back home, describing the wonders of the ship and the interesting people she had observed during the voyage. As she wrote, Rose became aware of gentle conversations around her. A young mother was helping her daughter write her first letter, carefully guiding the child's small hand as she formed each letter. An elderly gentleman composed what appeared to be a love letter to his wife, his face soft with affection as he chose each word carefully. The atmosphere in the room was one of connection and care, people reaching across distances to touch the hearts of those they loved. The afternoon brought perfect weather for deck activities, and passengers emerged from the ship's interior spaces to enjoy the warm sunshine and gentle breeze. The first-class promenade buzzed with quiet activity as people strolled leisurely, played deck games, or simply relaxed in comfortable chairs while reading or chatting with fellow travelers. Rose joined a group of passengers who were learning to play a new card game, laughing as they struggled to remember the rules and celebrating small victories with gentle applause. On the third-class deck, families had organized games for their children, and the air filled with happy shrieks and laughter as youngsters ran races and played tag among the deck chairs. Jack found himself recruited as a judge for a drawing competition where children used chalk to create pictures on a designated section of the deck. Their artwork ranged from simple flowers and houses to elaborate scenes of sea creatures and sailing ships, each drawing reflecting the artist's unique perspective on their ocean adventure. As evening approached, both Rose and Jack found themselves drawn to their favorite spots along the ship's railings, though neither knew of the other's routine. The sunset that night was even more spectacular than the sunrise had been, with the sky painted in brilliant shades of orange, purple, and deep red that reflected in the calm water like a mirror. The scene was so beautiful that conversations naturally grew quieter, as if everyone wanted to absorb every moment of the magnificent display. Rose stood at the first-class promenade, her hands resting gently on the polished wooden railing as she watched the sun sink slowly toward the horizon. Other passengers had gathered along the deck, creating a peaceful community of sunset watchers who shared appreciative murmurs and gentle sighs at particularly beautiful moments. The colors in the sky shifted and changed like a slow dance, each moment bringing new combinations that took her breath away. Jack leaned against the third-class railing, his sketchbook forgotten in his lap as he lost himself in the natural artistry unfolding before him. Families stood together in small groups, parents lifting children to see better, while grandparents shared stories of other sunsets they had witnessed in their long lives. The scene felt timeless and perfect, a moment when all the passengers, regardless of their backgrounds or destinations, shared the same sense of wonder at the beauty of the world. As darkness finally settled over the ocean, the ship's lights began to twinkle like stars, creating a warm glow that made the vessel feel like a floating constellation. Passengers began to make their way to the evening's entertainment, some heading to formal dining rooms, while others gathered in more casual spaces for simple meals and friendly conversation. The evening's activities aboard the ship reflected the perfect mood of the day. In the first-class areas, passengers enjoyed elegant music and refined conversation, while the third-class spaces buzzed with lively songs and storytelling that lasted well into the night. Both groups shared the same sense of contentment and community, the same appreciation for the remarkable journey they were all experiencing together. Rose spent the evening in the ship's grand salon, where passengers had gathered around the piano for an impromptu sing-along. The songs were gentle and familiar, melodies that everyone could hum along with even if they didn't know all the words. The atmosphere was warm and inclusive, with people of all ages contributing their voices to create harmony that filled the elegant space with joy. Jack joined a storytelling circle on the third-class deck, where passengers took turns sharing tales from their homelands. Some stories were funny, others touching, and all of them helped create deeper connections among people who had started the voyage as strangers. Children listened with wide eyes to tales of magical creatures and distant adventures, while adults appreciated the wisdom and humor woven into each narrative. As the fourth night settled over the Titanic, passengers retired to their cabins with hearts full of gratitude for another perfect day at sea. The ship had become more than just transportation. It had become a floating community where friendships were forming, where families were creating precious memories, and where every sunrise and sunset seemed to promise new possibilities for connection and joy. Rose prepared for sleep while reflecting on the day's simple pleasures. The beautiful sunrise, the peaceful time among the flowers, the friendly card game, and the spectacular sunset had combined to create a day that felt like a gift. She brushed her hair while looking out at the star-filled sky, feeling grateful for this opportunity to experience such beauty and tranquility, far from the familiar routines of her everyday life. Jack settled into his bunk with his sketchbook filled with images of the day's adventures. He had captured the wonder on children's faces, the dignity of working men, the joy of families making music together, and the shared appreciation of natural beauty that had united all the passengers during the magnificent sunset. Each drawing told a story of human connection and simple happiness that made his heart feel full. The great ship sailed peacefully through waters that remained calm and welcoming, carrying its precious cargo of dreams and hopes through another night of gentle rest. The stars above seemed especially bright, as if celebrating the harmony and contentment that had settled over everyone aboard this magnificent floating palace that had become, for a few magical days, the most perfect home anyone could imagine. The fifth morning aboard the Titanic dawned with a gentleness that seemed to wrap around the ship like a soft embrace. Rose stirred slowly in her comfortable bed, awakening not to any jarring sound, but to the warm touch of sunlight filtering through her porthole and the familiar, comforting rhythm of the ship moving steadily through peaceful waters. She lay still for a moment, listening to the subtle sounds that had become the soundtrack of her ocean home, the distant murmur of other passengers beginning their day, the soft footsteps of stewards in the corridors, and the ever-present whisper of water flowing past the hull. She chose a dress of soft mint green for the day, a color that reminded her of spring meadows and fresh beginnings. As she arranged her hair in the mirror, Rose noticed how the sea air had brought a healthy glow to her cheeks and a sparkle to her eyes that hadn't been there when she boarded the ship. The voyage was changing her in small, wonderful ways, filling her with a sense of adventure and possibility that grew stronger with each passing day. Meanwhile, Jack had awakened before dawn, drawn by an irresistible urge to capture the sunrise in his sketchbook once again. He dressed quietly, careful not to wake his sleeping cabin mates, and made his way to his favorite spot on the third-class deck. The pre-dawn air was crisp and clean, carrying the fresh scent of the ocean and the promise of another beautiful day. He settled against the railing with his drawing materials, watching as the eastern horizon began to glow with the first hints of morning light. As the sun slowly emerged from the water, painting the sky in delicate shades of rose and gold, Jack felt his heart fill with the same wonder he experienced every morning at sea. But today felt different somehow, charged with an energy he couldn't quite explain. Perhaps it was the way the light danced on the water, creating patterns that seemed almost alive. Or maybe it was simply the accumulated magic of several perfect days that had built to this moment of extraordinary beauty. Other early risers began to appear on the deck, drawn by the spectacular display unfolding in the sky. A young family stood together near the railing, the father lifting his small daughter so she could see better, while the mother pointed out different colors in the clouds. An elderly couple shared a warm blanket as they watched in comfortable silence, their weathered hands intertwined as they appreciated another of life's daily miracles together. Jack sketched the scene with quick, sure strokes, trying to capture not just the visual beauty, but the feeling of shared wonder that connected everyone present. The sunrise seemed to last longer than usual, as if nature itself wanted to give these ocean travelers extra time to appreciate the gift of a new day. When the sun finally cleared the horizon completely, bathing the deck in warm, golden light, a spontaneous round of gentle applause broke out among the watchers, a perfect expression of gratitude for the beauty they had all shared. After a leisurely breakfast, Rose decided to explore the ship's music room, where she had heard that passengers often gathered to share songs and listen to impromptu concerts. The space was beautifully appointed with several pianos and comfortable seating arranged to encourage both performance and intimate conversation. When she arrived, she found a small group of passengers already there, including a talented young woman who was playing a gentle waltz, while others listened appreciatively. The atmosphere in the music room was warm and welcoming, with people of various ages and backgrounds united by their love of melody and harmony. Rose settled into a plush chair near the window, where she could listen to the music while watching the endless expanse of ocean roll by outside. The combination of beautiful sounds and peaceful views created a sense of perfect contentment that seemed to slow time itself, allowing her to savor every note and every moment. And so our gentle tale draws to a close, like the last notes of a lullaby fading into peaceful silence. Jack and Rose, two souls who found beauty in simple moments aboard that magnificent ship, remind us that the most precious stories are often found in quiet conversations, shared sunrises, and the warmth of human connection. As you drift toward your own dreams tonight, let their peaceful journey carry you softly into sleep, where every breath becomes as gentle as ocean waves, and every heartbeat matches the steady rhythm of a ship sailing safely through calm waters toward tomorrow's endless possibilities.